Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Corey Marshall, and I'm a marketing manager here at Johnson Controls. Welcome to our event today, using data to adapt buildings for changing business needs. Before we get started, I just want to review some of the interactive tools you have available to you. On the right-hand side of your screen, we have a chat feature where you can send messages to everyone. We will also post some questions, follow-up questions for you to answer throughout today's event. We have Q&A where you will be able to pose some questions that you have, and we will answer those as time allows at the end of our content. We also have a poll question for you, so be sure to answer that and share your perspective, and then our presenters will review those results with you. We are recording today's event, and we will share those links out once they are available. We do have one quick change to our speaker lineup. Due to some travel logistics and time zones crossed, Vineet will not be able to join us today. However, we do have the fabulous Jennifer Heath, who will be stepping in for him. With that, I think we are ready to get started. I'll turn it over to our speakers to introduce themselves and dive into the data.
Great. Joy, you first.
I'll go first. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Joy Trinquet. I'm a senior analyst at Verdantix, which is an independent research and advisory firm covering a lot of different subjects, including the real estate and built environment. And I've been there for about 6 years, predominantly focusing on the integrated workplace management system. So I do MS/CPIP, space and workplace. And my main vertical is around offices and healthcare.
Thanks, Joy. And Joy, you and I have known each other for a number of years. I'm Brian Haines. I manage strategy for the digital product portfolio at Johnson Controls for OpenBlue. Before Johnson Controls, I was with FM Systems for a number of years. We got acquired by Johnson Controls about 2 years ago. Really excited to talk about this topic today and how it really has expanded our reach and our ability to be able to talk about smart buildings, autonomous buildings, and where the world is going. So Jennifer, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Brian, Joy. It's great to be here today. My name is Jennifer Heath. I am in product marketing for OpenBlue. Like Brian, I came into Johnson Controls via the FM Systems acquisition. Prior to that, I was with another workplace technology company that had been acquired by FM Systems. So I've been with the collective company almost 15 years and in the workplace management industry for almost 20. And I am excited to be here today.
Great.
And I think I will kick us off here. All right. So quick introduction to Verdantix. I know I just said this. So independent research and advisory firm. We help both software vendors and software buyers with lots of different reports, advisory projects, software selection, and we cover a lot of different industries, not just the real estate and built environment. We also do industrial transformation, so more on the kind of heavy industrial side, EHS, ESG, sustainability, net zero, and I think we now have a total of 6 different practice groups. So if you want to learn more, obviously, from your play. So let's dive in. So I'll be kicking us off here, and I'll be going through some survey data, kind of talking about what the trends are happening in the industry, and kind of talked with Brian and Jennifer following each one, seeing what they're thinking, kind of what they're seeing, and yeah, it should be a fun webinar. So to kick us off, the main theme of this kind of webinar today is the need to adapt buildings to changing needs. And so if we see here, there real estate executives today kind of face a ton of market trends that are really impacting them. You have ESG, the demand on the focus on occupant well-being and productivity, just general digitization, and really crucially, the evolving space usage. And you can see that they go hand in hand, but also differ, and they all kind of have follow-on implications. So with that evolving space usage need, since hybrid working, which has been around now, I would say commonplace since 2022, so for about 3 years, firms are still really increasing their efforts to be optimizing that space utilization, and to be able to kind of meet the impact or face the impact of all of these trends that are shaping these real estate strategies. Firms really need the data to be able to match and respond to these trends, because without it, it's just big trends impacting folks. That's it. But Brian, Jennifer, on your point of view, do you guys kind of see these are the same market trends that are shaping firms? These are kind of the top priorities that are on the top of executives' minds and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we do our own analysis, obviously Verdantix is one of the primary resources that we use to really get back up and deeper insights because of the broad reach and the number of organizations that you can reach. We're seeing the same trends, but we're also seeing kind of a combination of trends doing some interesting things. So when you look at, for instance, ESG and sustainability and connecting that to climate risks, et cetera, we're seeing that being closely linked to things like energy efficiency, like reducing costs. So it's not just about sustainability, but it's about cost reduction, cost control of resources, which is interesting because both of those are key topics for facilities managers and executives right now. So I find that one really is a big driver. The second one is, I love this highlight around demand for enhanced occupant health, well-being, and productivity. We're seeing a real push towards greater workplace experience for people who have returned to the workplace. And the truth is that I've seen a number of numbers this year. I believe this is the first time since the pandemic that there are more people back in the office than working hybrid, and that the number of remote workers has actually shrank pretty significantly back to almost pre-pandemic levels, which is really interesting as well. So what we're seeing is the need to cross what we call the digital divide. And the digital divide is sort of on the left. You've got sort of what a building engineer would look like, or information coming from the building, maybe building automation systems or IoT devices, a lot of data. And on the right, you've got sort of the facilities organization doing things like work order management, space management, sort of all those traditional things. In the center, we've got the occupants who are now getting the value of being able to see a blend of that data in ways that help them make better, more informed choices about how they're using the facilities. They get to understand when their coworkers are going to be in, so they prioritize going in on those days. They get to see things such as the indoor air quality in a space, and facilities team can react to spaces that air quality nosedives when people are occupying it, which is a pretty common thing. So really, we're seeing this all kind of come together, Joy, in interesting ways. I think two of the big ones are really managing energy use and costs, and the second one around workplace experience. Jen, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I would expand a little bit on the workplace experience, that I think it is something that really did come to the forefront during the pandemic. We've introduced this concept that employees can have choices about what their work experience can be. And now it has really put the onus on employers and organizational leadership to be really thoughtful about what kind of workplace experience they want to have, what kind of culture they want to have. And the data is absolutely key in understanding some of those trends and patterns within your workforce, because otherwise you're just constantly reacting. And real estate is too expensive, and it takes too much time and effort to reorganize your workplace, to consider a restack or a consolidation. All of these things are very costly. They all have big emissions price tags. Renovations and new construction all come with heavy emissions outputs. And so the more you can be strategic and have data that's informing those decisions, the more successful you're going to be across the board. It really enables you to be proactive in those designs and decisions.
Yeah, one last thing to add here about that last one, AI and machine learning adoption. So this was a 2024 question. You cannot go to a conference right now related to building operations that doesn't have AI, is just about in every other topic. And it's really picked up steam, not only just in the way we think about artificial intelligence really sort of helping us to optimize, the analysis of data as related to the operation of buildings, but frankly, everyone is using it. I've talked to my grandparents using ChatGPT to get questions. I was talking to our digital marketing expert yesterday, and he was saying that Google AI is taking over traditional Google search in like a browser, which is really amazing, because AI, I think, is picking up such immense speed related to a number of different things, from natural language queries all the way up to generative AI, which is the ability to be able to, generate content like photos and images and things like that from AI, but also really going to we're actually seeing the advent of software actually being developed with agentic AI, which is, I think that one's got tremendous momentum, and I wouldn't be surprised in 25, 26, as this survey is conducted, we don't see that one push up higher.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it also paints a good story seeing AI kind of at the bottom of this market trend impacting, because it shows how much bigger of an impact those first few trends had initially back in 2024, how big ESG, the focus on ESG was, how big the focus on occupant well-being, that although AI and machine learning were huge back, last year, they still weren't as impactful as these really, really big ones that executives are facing kind of day to day. And so if we take it from the trends and look into the portfolio initiatives that firms are going to, and Brian, I love that you mentioned that this is kind of the first time we've seen a shrink in the remote and an increase in the hybrid, because here we see that a lot of firms are definitely pursuing looks to expand their real estate portfolio, which is kind of a change, I would say, since, during COVID, there was a lot of talk about like cutting off all this space, reducing everything. And firms have realized that maybe, no, we don't need that. Like hybrid, we still need a good amount of space. We just need to change how the space is. And so, and to be able to change how the space is, again, they need the data to help inform them. And across all of these, like if you need to consider climate risks in real estate acquisitions, guess what? You need data on that climate risk of that building, of that region, of how that would impact your portfolio as a whole. Expanding real estate, where do you want to expand? What amenities do you want to relocate to? And all of these kind of initiatives really require that basic level of data of what's happening in my building, how are we, what are the costs, what is the energy usage, where are the people spending their time, to be able to inform any of these kind of initiatives that people are facing. Brian and Jennifer, I don't know if there's kind of any thoughts on these kind of subset of initiatives here. These are the kind of the top ones.
Yeah, Jen, you want to take that one first? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, the one in here that really surprised me is the 59% not pursuing downsizing their portfolio. That to me really stands out as a big shift in the last couple of years, because when hybrid first really started, that was sort of like the next assumption, right? Like, well, if people can work from home, we can downsize our real estate. And I think it's interesting for two reasons. Number one, I think people are really rethinking what the workplace can be. And so the immediate reaction is not we need to downsize, but that maybe we need to reconfigure. Maybe we need to, go from a large headquarters to multiple satellite offices that better suit where our employees are located. They're thinking about it differently. But I also think it's interesting because we know, since we have been tracking this data for many years, prior to the pandemic, utilization levels were not super high. For most organizations, utilization levels were still hovering in the maybe 45 to 50% range pre-pandemic, at a time when most leaders probably would have said, oh, we have great utilization, we have great occupancy. But the data shows something different. And so the fact that there's still this almost hesitation to consider downsizing the portfolio, it just reinforces the fact that you need data to make that decision. You need to really understand objectively across your portfolio, what is your actual utilization? And it's important too to know that utilization and occupancy are not necessarily the same thing. They're used interchangeably as if they mean the same, but occupancy is really more of a one-to-one, like how many people are in the building in a given day. It's not how are they interacting with your space? How long are they there? How are they moving through the space? What amenities or resources are they using most often? That's utilization. And that is a much more important metric as you think about what you need in your portfolio.
Yeah, there's sort of two interesting points that I want to make here. And that is, we've been measuring utilization with technology since about 2017. That's when we first started supporting occupancy sensors and doing analytics around utilization. Where it gets really interesting is when you take utilization and use it as a multiplication factor for the effectiveness of other real estate operations. In other words, we're taking utilization and matching it to actual building operation. And what that allows you to do a lot of things, not only understand how the space is being used, but it allows you to actually change the operation of a facility based upon the days when you've got low utilization versus days when you've got really maximum utilization. It includes bringing building systems down when people aren't in the space, turning out the lights, saving money, saving dollars, being more efficient. But then when everyone's in, opening up things a little bit more, providing greater access, and really being able to sort of turn the dials up a little bit and really matching utilization to operations. And that's all about data, right? That's what you said, Jen. It's all about being able to have that data available and not just keeping it in front of an analyst who's watching, maybe bar charts and graphs go by, but really providing that data to the operational team so they can actually affect the way that the building is being operated, and the facilities engineers who manage the building control system and building automation systems, which is fantastic. The second point I wanted to make was, we opened a new office during the pandemic. We got rid of our old office because we did downsize, and we may have over-rotated a little bit because, we had gone to 100% hybrid work, and, our utilization was extremely low, and people were sort of in diverse locations. Then we got acquired by Johnson Controls, and they have hybrid workplace rules as well, but they also have three days a week in the office. So that's not necessarily what we designed for. So on the days when we're all there, like maybe we're having a meeting and people are flying in, can't find a place to sit. I mean, it's absolutely packed. And people are using things like meeting rooms for touchdown spaces, which kind of, negates the reason for having collaborative space. So I think the answer, though, here is data and the analysis of the utilization and how the facility is being used is really a powerful tool to help facilities organizations be flexible. In other words, they can change and iterate, make sure they get it right. You probably didn't get it right the first time. I think we are evaluating, like, mixing up our space a little bit differently. Probably not going to expand right now, maybe in the future, but really it's all based upon the data and our ability to be able to do really rich, deep analysis about how the building's being used. So that's kind of a use case, our own use case. And we see it often with our clients in the market as well, is that people are sort of in this interesting pattern right now where they're sort of holding on to what they have and making sort of longer term decisions, but it's all based upon data and really being smart about it.
Another one on this slide that I thought was so interesting, it's the first time I've seen this with this kind of emphasis, is the fact that they are taking into account climate change and the potential of risk and damage from weather events in making their real estate decisions. That's the first time I've seen that particular concern shown with this kind of weight and consideration. I think for a long time, for most of my life, we've known that climate change scientifically is a fact. But there's still this sort of hesitation of, oh, is it really changing, or doesn't it always change, cycles over time? And there's been maybe a little bit of an avoidance of, how do we deal with this? How do we respond to this? And so that really jumps out at me as an acceptance of a broader fact that now, again, we can leverage data, we can leverage technology to get in front of some of these changes and start to be more proactive, again, instead of reactive, to be able to plan a little bit more, to model out scenarios to see how our buildings would weather the storm, quite literally. I think that's a really interesting one to now be coming into the conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm wondering, I'd like to see the data broken down by geography to see if there's greater emphasis in specific areas, because there's a lot of things that affect that decision, right? So that's an interesting one, Jen, you and I should probably dig into to try to see if there's locational or geographic differences in that data as it comes in.
Yeah, I think another thing that's kind of driven the consideration of climate risks to be more important than, I would say, in the past years is the impact that climate risk ratings are now having on the insurance costs of buildings.
Yes.
So that's why people are like, maybe we should consider this now, especially if there's a big cost cutting emphasis as well in the real estate kind of management industry. They go hand in hand. But all in all, hopefully it does signal that in the long term, people will be just more accepting of climate change and climate risks. And, if it takes the cost to be the main decider to make people care, then that's how it has to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever dollars get involved or money gets involved, decisions start to get affected a little bit more. ESG is one of those, right? So it's tying sustainability to energy initiatives and saving money makes that more palatable across specific regions. I think the same thing comes down to things like insurance costs. I know, Joy, that you used to live in Florida and now you're in the UK, and there's probably different views on that. I've got colleagues who tell me that their insurance on their homes, especially if they're on the coast, are getting almost untenable, right? So it's affecting the way they think about their own real estate. And I imagine that's the same for corporations. The more and more things get damaged and insurance companies lose billions of dollars, the more the decisions will be made to maybe alter where they have their real estate portfolio. It's interesting. We'll see how that one plays out.
Yeah. Awesome. And so, given that AI was kind of one of the bottom ones in terms of the market trends, we asked the follow-up of where will AI have the most impact? And I think it's really interesting, one, the low percentages of transformative impact that we see on this slide, as people are still really keen on AI, but they're still taking a pretty cautious approach. I think they don't want to say that like it will 100% do this, but they do believe that have high impact. And we look at the kind of top two areas. It's around recommendations, enhancing analytics, and enabling autonomous buildings, which is really great. And, the AI applications that are in the market today are definitely kind of moving towards these abilities. They definitely have the recommendation analytics and moving towards the autonomous buildings part. But I think, the one thing that people are missing out of or realizing when they're trying to take advantage of all these AI use cases is that you need the data to be in good shape before you can use any of the algorithms and any of the fun, shiny stuff. And it's not ready for most firms. So I think that's kind of how we're seeing these low transformative impact, because they're like, yeah, it's going to be transformative. And then like, oh, well, wait, we can't do any of it yet because our data is not there. And yeah, so Brian.
I love that part, because that's something I recommend to people. What's really interesting is that a lot of the big building, sort of industrial buildings manufacturers acquired companies like FM Systems, Johnson Control did us. It's really about our data. So our clients have billions of square feet of heavily curated facilities data. And when you unleash AI on that, you get really amazingly accurate results to help you make better decisions about your facility state operations. I always use the analogy, if I wanted to know the history of the United States and all I have is a spreadsheet that lists all 50 states, AI is not going to tell me anything. It's probably going to maybe list them in the order that they became states, or maybe it's going to list them alphabetically. I don't know what it's going to do. But if I ask that same question and I give it access to all the data in the US Library of Congress, I'm going to get a very rich, deep answer. And that's, I think a lot of people don't understand that AI really requires that. It's not going to make things up. It really requires those deep data sets. The other one I'm a little bit surprised about here, and I think we'll see, I like the way you guys have these ones at the bottom, because I see the ones at the bottom kind of like trending up. And I'll tell you why I see the training and upskilling of staff angling up. This is something, so one of the organizations that, I've been involved with for many years, and then on the technology council is IFMA, or the International Facility Managers Association. And one of the big concerns about IFMA is the aging out of facility professionals. And when they leave, they take 35, 40 years of experience with them. And we're not backfilling nearly as fast with young professionals coming in who have that experience. So there's that challenge. We talk about this all the time because Johnson Controls, I can tell you, is all AI all the time. We talk about it, we build it into our solutions. We really think it's important, but we also think it's starting to get really super important to start taking that knowledge that's basically in the heads and the minds of humans and start getting that into the software, so that your buildings and the solutions that you use to manage your buildings start to act like partners to you, where you can actually ask questions. And you see this all the time now with natural language queries, the ability to be able to ask the system a question, and even complex questions such as, hey, tell me which one of my buildings has the highest utilization and least amount of maintenance costs, and layer on top of that demographic information and weather data. I mean, really crazy questions, and you're going to get really informed answers as long as you have those accurate data sets. This is the kind of information that would have required experts and analysts days, if not weeks, to answer. I was a space and occupancy manager and analyst early in my career. And when my director would ask me for, an analysis of space across the campus, it was always about breaking out the spreadsheets and the AutoCAD drawings, working for weeks to produce something that would then be printed and handed and then used in meetings. Those kinds of questions can be answered as you're walking by someone in a hallway now, or even on the street or in an airport. You could ask really complex questions and get answers amazingly fast that are accurate and something you can stand on. I see a lot of people using AI to help prioritize their day, or saying, hey, I'm going into a meeting, I've been on PTO for a week. Tell me what my top 5 maintenance issues are, so that when I go in there, and as a matter of fact, produce a PowerPoint slide so that I'm ready. And it does it. And it's pretty amazing. You have to check, right? As humans, we always have to be the adult in the room and make sure that we're checking and validating. But I think the truth is, AI is a friend to facilities managers, and it's the way we up-level our expertise and how we look like superheroes from here on out. I think it's going to become more and more important to the answers that we give. Jen?
I totally agree. And we've talked a lot about that as far as the evolution of the facility manager role, that there's this, traditional perspective of someone down in the boiler room with the toolbox, and they're, it's a very hands-on sort of a role. And today, with the technology that we have, the access to data, the possibilities with AI, it is evolving into much more of an IT role. And I think that's going to be a really interesting trend and change to watch over the next few years. And back to Joy's point originally about the importance of, well, both of you, the importance of those underlying data sets. I think a lot of people feel almost a certain pressure that they need to incorporate AI into their workflows. Like, they know there's opportunities to be more efficient, to move faster, but they don't really know where to start. And I think you have to look at what are some business processes that could benefit from AI, is the first question. And then the second question is, what data sets do you have today that can inform that? And if you don't have any data sets today, then that's a good place to start to think about, where can I implement technology? What can I digitize so that I can start to pull these different data sets together?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it's really kind of amazing to think about what this data is telling us. Now, when I see number 2 there, enhancing analytics and insights, there's solutions, including our own, OB Insights platform, which is AI based. It's interesting when you see all the bar charts and diagrams and all of that kind of stuff. But I always ask people who are showing this to me, what's it telling me? Because unless I'm an analyst, or unless I'm an expert on that specific data, I may not get the underlying, meaning of what I'm actually looking at. Or it may be scrolling off, right? There may be a problem that just was yesterday and I missed it. I really think the value of what AI is starting to provide us. You see that next one that says querying data via chatbots. I think that one's fantastic, because that's that natural language ability to be able to ask, those tough questions and get the answers really, really quickly. But we've introduced something called narratives. And narratives is basically using AI to tell me what I'm looking at in a way that a human can understand. And it's really simple. It just takes the information and says, here's where you have a problem, and here are the recommendations to solve that problem. That is like a goldmine for anyone who's using these kinds of solutions. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think that that's where we're going to see it going. It's going to be less about dashboards and like diagrams, bar charts, and things like that, line diagrams. And it's going to be more about recommendations, and maybe even automated workflows, as you see there, where the data is telling like a building automation system to make a change. We're doing this already, where we're controlling, maybe rebalancing the air in a building system by feeding that data into a building automation system like Metasys. So we're proactively doing that. But I think it's the more we get towards autonomous buildings in the future, this data is going to be driving building behavior, which is super powerful.
And very nicely, you touched upon the automating workflows part. It's a very nice segue into my next slide. So lots of potentials for AI, including automating things. However, it does require firms to have their data strategy in place, to have all of the data aggregated across the different solutions, and ideally have the solutions integrated with one another if they do have point solutions. Brings me to my next slide, which is around the firm's plans to use either integrated or a point solution for each of the different processes. So I will say, please take this data with a grain of salt. Obviously, we can't take it as the holy grail, and it will differ from firm to firm. So this is obviously a sample of 300 folks, so don't take it as the holy grail. But I think it's interesting if we look at the kind of top 5-ish processes that are looking to be the most integrated solution. We have capital investment, climate risk, sustainability, space, FM, and energy. And those are kind of the big 5 that, 1, impact costs, 2, are interrelated. So to be able to do good capital investments, you need to know where is the maintenance going. You need to have that FM data. To do good energy management and sustainability, you need to have that access to data. They need to be interlinking. If you want to do like an energy project tied to capital investment, you need to have all these data sources kind of connected together. And so that's a good trend that we're seeing, that a lot of firms are planning to integrate those solutions, or either switching from point solutions so they already have them. And it really kind of shows that importance of not only using that data, like having the data, but having it in an interconnected way that can flow between different point solutions, if they are point solutions, to really automate anything, to really be able to adapt the changes and find the trends. It's not able to do that if there isn't an integrated kind of area for it to access.
Yeah, Jen, you want me to just start this one? Because I got like a billion thoughts. So this one's interesting. It's a rare organization that has all of those in a single system, right?
Yeah.
It's a very rare organization that would, especially when you're talking about global organizations. I was talking to a global energy company in the UK recently, and they've got 3 different maintenance management solutions globally, and none of them talk to one another. And that's kind of the typical problem that we still see a lot of organizations dealing with. So I think it all starts with a data strategy. Like, right, when you look at all of the information you need to manage your real estate facilities kind of globally. You may be global, you may be local, you may be a campus, you may be multiple campuses within the same continent. You may have, all of your buildings close to one another. You may have your buildings thousands of miles apart. It's often that each one of those buildings may have different data requirements depending where it is. A building in California has different data security and privacy requirements than a building does in Texas. It does. There's local laws that say the way you need to curate that information, and the same thing certainly goes for accessing data. We've got people all the time who are saying, listen, I'm in Germany, I want my data in Germany. I want it housed in the cloud in Germany, or I want it in the EU, or if I'm in North America, I don't want my data in the EU. So it's complex. I will say that. I will say, Joy, the best way to deal with it, I think, is really to think about a total data strategy, where the data is going to come from, understanding all of those regulatory and local compliance, but also having a strategy for securing this data, and really having a really strong strategy for edge to cloud security. And what I mean by that is the edge of your organization, securing that data as it goes up into the cloud to all of these different potential solutions you may be using to manage all of those things on that slide right now. Whatever system you're using, or however you're bringing that data, having a really strong strategy for the sort of edge to cloud. The other one is really looking at platform. If you're going to go with a platform, or if you're going to use, let's say, a platform to have all of this data in one platform, or you're going to use a platform to unify data from multiple solutions, it really needs to be open in a way that allows you to be able to connect. You may have 6 different building automation systems across all of your facilities. I've seen an airport that had 11 different building automation systems in it, and the client wanted all of that data to feed into a single solution. That's where you need an open platform. The other one is deep infrastructure for integration. And what I mean by that is you're bringing all this data in, you've got to be able to scale. Nobody has patience anymore. We're all waiting for data instantly. There's no more of this load time or waiting for a fax to come through, certainly. It's really all about real-time access to data from building operations across all of these different functional areas. So I think the challenge kind of goes back up to the top, Joy. It's really about having your strategy, understanding, how you're going to secure all this data, access it, who's going to be allowed to be able to have access to it by role, where's it going to come from, and then how are you going to disseminate that? Is it going to be through a variety of devices, maybe mobile devices, maybe kiosk devices, maybe desktop devices? It's a big challenge, and I think I think it's something that needs to be considered as someone looks at this overall strategy.
Yeah, so when I look at this, and your point, Brian, that it would be a very advanced system that had all of this different, functionality digitized and automated this way. And that really is what a smart building is, right? Like, this is kind of the holy grail, that you do have all of these different things in an integrated system in a way that you can, aggregate data and normalize data. And everybody's in a different place in that journey of getting to a smart building. And I think sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming, because this is a lot of functionality and a lot of operations inside your organization. How do you start to bring all these things together? I think it's important to remember that it's really only been the last 10 to 15 years that we've had the technology to do this sort of thing. The advent of the cloud and being able to leverage APIs to bring data together into single systems. We're in still a relatively new place. So if you feel like you're at the very beginning of your journey, you're definitely in good company, because a lot of people are just starting to understand how they can bring these different systems together and use data in these different ways. And it brings us to, we have a poll question today for our audience. We love to know where you are in your journey. So in the scale of a smart building, from being really disconnected, everything is manual, no integrated data, to being on the cusp of having truly an autonomous building. We see that as kind of the spectrum. So it'll be interesting to see where you all are on your journey.
I thought we were 100%, and we have some buildings with connected data sources. That's actually pretty interesting. Jen, you've seen me do the presentation before where I do sort of the evolution of smart buildings and autonomous buildings. And I love to say that 99% of the buildings in the world are really dumb, which is the truth. And that's no slam on the buildings. It's just we did not have the technology to connect them in ways that was really that useful. There's a lot of buildings that, whenever I go into a conference or something and I'm in a hotel, I just look up and I look for technology, and you rarely see technology that's really helping these operators understand how to, operate these facilities more effectively. Rarely can you ask someone how many people have been in this space and how well is it utilized over the last 30 days, and you're going to get a really solid answer. However, it is getting easier to do that, right? We're able to. It doesn't require base building design and construction. You don't need to say all new buildings that we're going to have are going to be smart buildings. You probably should, because it's easier to do. But there are a lot of technologies you can retrofit building automation systems, which is a little bit of a heavy lift. And then there's a much lighter lift, and that is using lightweight, IoT-based technologies that you can put easily in your facilities. Even old 100 years old facilities that allow you to measure utilization, indoor air quality, all sorts of things. You can implement those to make your building smarter and start getting connected data from your facilities. So it looks like we're settling in at, we have some, it's at the top. I can't scroll. Yeah, by far. We have some built. I'm not surprised by this answer. Are you, Jane? No, pretty much what I.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
Where you get into trouble when you ask a question and everything is 25%. That's when you're like, I don't know what to say. But this is pretty clear. Almost half are buildings with some connected data sources.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the other thing on this particular slide that jumped out to me again is the climate risk monitoring, that being as high up as it is, that there is so much technology now that you can do that modeling, and you can have sensors that detect for moisture, and you can do all these things to better prepare your buildings and your teams for an extreme weather event. I think it's really interesting that that has bubbled up twice now.
Yeah, there's one that surprises me. Well, two that surprised me. But the interesting thing is that when you look at the percentages, none of these percentages are really massively apart, right? So it does cascade down, to the bottom, but the truth is there's not a massive difference. So what I'm going to say maybe is less apparent than what I think it is in this diagram. So when you look at the capital investment planning and you scroll all the way down to the bottom half, and then you see asset and you see project management and you see asset and maintenance management. Those are all completely linked, right? We have so many clients in the market right now telling us they want to increase the length of the usability of their existing real estate, and they want to increase the lifespan of assets they already have installed. That's everything from building equipment, heavy building equipment, medical equipment in a healthcare setting, all the way down to furniture. They want it to last longer. There's just a need right now to do that, right? So it's interesting to see those two. I would have imagined that they would have been closer because, about capital investment planning, when you're looking at where you're going to put your dollars to maybe reduce your backlog of deferred maintenance, or you're going to start bringing your buildings up to a higher standard around workplace experience, it's going to involve projects, and it's going to involve asset and maintenance management closely linked. So that's an interesting one that I see maybe a little bit further apart than I would have anticipated.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. I had the same kind of thought, like how they're really closely tied. And the way I kind of rationalized it is by saying that many capital planning and investment management software solutions will also have the element of project management embedded within the solution. So maybe they don't have like a separate just project management solution. It's just embedded within the capital investment planning. I rationalized it in my head.
Interesting.
All right. Awesome. Now we've kind of looked at it from the software and system side of thing. I just want to take a final look at kind of the hardware side of things. And the main story I just want to call out here is that firms are using more and more hardware to collect more and more data about their buildings more than ever. Water leak and quality sensors kind of have jumped up this year more than in the past. In the past, I would say it's been occupancy sensors, indoor air quality, and energy meters, but we've seen water kind of jump up there. I think it's just kind of water is kind of one of the metrics, one of the utilities that buildings use a lot of, but people have kind of, we've always been focused on like electricity and gas consumption, and water, I think, has kind of fallen back over the years, and firms are now realizing, wait, there's technologies out there that can do the same thing that we could do for energy, but for our water. So why don't we start implementing those a lot more? And on the leak side, I think it's specifically interesting if you think about it from an office building point of view, because if you have one toilet in that office building that the flusher didn't properly close and that water is just running and running and running, that can end up costing a lot of money for just one weekend of that happening. I know just personally in your house, if you leave one running for, I left it for a week and my water bill came back at, $1,000 more than it usually is, which is ridiculous. So you can only imagine how much that would be for an office building. And it's really great to hear is just obviously seeing firms just increasing data collection across not just occupancy, but we're also seeing energy, vibration sensors for actual equipment performance. So, rather than a yearly check on the asset where a technician goes and presses a few things and you get the condition, you put a vibration sensor on it, you get live, you can do much more accurate maintenance activities. You can start doing predictive, proactive, and really reducing costs. So seeing a lot more investments in hardware to get building level data to then be able to combine that, potentially use AI, potentially automate and reduce costs overall, and just keep up with the changing needs.
Yeah, that's interesting because water is a little bit surprising to me, but then also it's kind of not when I really think about it, because water is kind of like the next resource that people are really concerned about. It's been energy for a really long time, and now we're looking at like water availability, water quality. Obviously, leak sensors. There's a lot of really interesting, really easy to install technology that allows you to be able to do that. There's a sensor that I've looked at recently to a partner that you just basically can screw it to the floor. If it detects water on the floor, it lets you know, right? It just sends you a message saying something's going on here. And so I think it's getting easier and easier to deploy these. What we're seeing is right down there in the middle, probably because we're an industrial manufacturer and energy and the use of building control systems is really becoming a lot more prevalent. So the smart meters and energy sub-meters topic that we hear all the time, because people want more granular data than they're currently getting about their energy usage. Unfortunately, it's really been like at the power company level. When I think about our facilities, we really kind of wait for that power bill to come in to tell us how much energy we used. And it's always been, kind of like that month where your energy use is way up. You're kind of shocked, right? But it's too late at that point. Like 30 days, 45 days, it's already gone by. We're really seeing a lot of need for more smart sensoring and smart metering technology, not only at the building level, but inside of the building, maybe in the floor or zone level. We're seeing that a lot, Joy, and we're seeing solutions come up that are getting easier to understand and manage, and both smart meters and energy sub-metering, so that we can get more granular data. Really, I have seen some technologies really at the plug level, right, where you can put a plug on a plug. I've done that myself. I've got them in my house where you can put a smart plug on a plug to tell me how much power I'm using. Where it's really good, we're really going to see a change there is when electrical subcontractors are being asked to install those sub-metering at the plug level or at the load level during construction or renovation retrofit. That's going to be really powerful, because then you're going to be able to see a lot more. But right now, I think people would be happy at the floor level. So I'm seeing that a little bit. Indoor beacons, interesting. Not seeing that pretty consistently, but not as much as I saw it when it first became kind of a hot thing around like wayfinding and the ability to be able to do location-based stuff. Interesting, but not seeing it as much. Vibration sensors, definitely, because we have AI built into our building automation systems that monitors vibrations and equipment, so that believe it or not, like heavy vibration, well, it makes sense, is an indicator that something's going wrong or potentially going wrong. Maybe bearings are going bad in a fan or a motor, or a belt is wearing. And so vibration sensing can provide a lot of information back about the health.
And I think the equipment sensors are so powerful, the vibration sensors, because it is such an early indicator of a problem. You're not waiting for that belt to break or for that fan to break down. You know immediately that something is off. If it's the vibration has increased or decreased, a very slight temperature change, it tells you right away. It's like the ultimate early detection that something is off. And there is a lot of cost savings in preventative maintenance and early detection, because repairing one piece of an HVAC unit is much simpler and cost effective than letting it completely break down and now you have to replace the whole thing. So I think vibration sensors have so much bang for their buck in terms of what you can do from a maintenance strategy to really shift into that predictive, proactive mindset. And the other one in here that I think continues to be interesting is always going to be air quality. I'm always going to appreciate the fact that the pandemic brought air quality to the forefront. I think it was something that was just sort of in the background. It felt like a nice to have. But when it all of a sudden was right in front of us as certain conditions will propagate the spread of a virus more than other conditions, all of a sudden it really came together as this is key for employee health. And there's so many other areas that it goes into, not just the spread of a virus, but poor air quality causes fatigue. It makes it hard to concentrate. It causes headaches. There's all these downstream impacts. And I think it's so important that has really come to the forefront. It's playing into the workplace experience conversation. And really it plays into your energy management conversation, because air quality is a leading indicator of HVAC performance. If your air quality starts to tank, one of the first things you need to do is evaluate your HVAC and your airflow. There could be a problem somewhere in the system. So I think that's a really interesting one that I think more people now accept it as kind of standard that we're going to track this and monitor this, but it's a very new development compared to 5-10 years ago. And I think it's a really good advancement.
Yeah, I agree. Temperature has been something that everyone can intuitively understand. You're either too hot or too cold, right? You don't necessarily need to be told with a number that you're too hot or too cold. So we've been doing that for a long time. I think the next great one is, and I keep running into this, is CO2. Anytime people use space, the space gets the quality of the air gets worse. And we have been noticing this because we now have office buildings or plant locations really easy to see. Anytime anybody goes over, believe it or not, become uncomfortable in that space. People lose productivity. And I'll tell you, probably in some of the most important boardrooms in the world, really big decisions are being made by people who aren't thinking clearly, right? Because the CO2 levels, as those boardrooms are packed with humans, and we're all breathing out and really increasing the humidity, the temperature in those spaces, and the CO2, decisions are being made and productivity goes down. It really does. So that's a really easy one. Solving it is maybe a little bit more difficult. You could do things such as cycle the air more often. You can put more air. You can condition the space a little bit more fully. You may want to look at things like bringing in more external air, which was pretty popular during the pandemic. You may look at your filtration. There's a lot of things here that are really interesting. And I think that's kind of like, when I see this, I'm not surprised to see indoor air quality way up there at the top, like you were mentioning, because I think it's kind of the next, I think it's low hanging fruit. I don't know if you know how easy it is, or those listening, really easy to deploy indoor air quality sensors. Most of them can just stick on the wall. They can either be battery powered or use PoE or power over Ethernet. They don't require a lot of infrastructure. They just need to be able to communicate, and they're powerful and really easy to see how healthy your space is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the availability of air quality sensors has really helped the uptake of them. I mean, you could just buy one for $35 on IKEA if you want. I mean, it won't communicate anything, but you can get one. At least you'll know the information. But IKEA sells them. You know, that's when you know. That's when you know it's become commonplace. Is if it's for sale on IKEA, it's a pretty common piece of.
I've got one here sitting on my desk, as a matter of fact. That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so this is just my summary slide. I'm not going to go through it because we've spoken about each of these kind of in depth one by one. Big focus on occupant well-being. So we were just talking about the indoor air quality. There we go. Nicely ties into my first kind of summarization point. A lot of people investing in tools to really improve that experience. The overall just digitization of the real estate facility processes. Things that used to be manual are now being made digital. Are now being digitalized because they need that data to be able to act quickly, such as helping them optimize their real estate footprints or improving building and sustainability. Again, I'm tying them all together here. One that I maybe didn't really talk about, but Brian, you did, was around the capital projects piece. So it's a big focus this year. Firms really want to extend the asset lives of their buildings or of the equipment. So we're seeing a huge push on that capital projects investments, combined with, the need to reduce costs. So both identifying and then budgeting them, and then just firms are collecting more and more data. And that's our summary, but that gives us a nice 7 minutes for Q&A.
Let's do it.
Okay, we do have a couple questions that have come in. Let's start off with just where should someone begin with their smart building strategy?
I'll take that. I love to talk about this topic. Where to begin is understanding what you're trying to achieve. I see a lot of organizations really sort of kind of say, yeah, we're gonna start adopting a smart building strategy, or we're going to just go for it. We're going to start making our buildings smarter, without really looking at what problem they're trying to solve and then prioritizing what those problems are. So I think that's the best place to start. What do you think, Jen?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you have to consider what is your most pressing business challenge, what business outcome would really benefit you the most, and start there. The great thing about smart building technology is it's not really a linear journey. If you need to solve for utilization, if you need to solve for energy, if you need to solve for a hybrid strategy and scheduling, whatever is the most pressing business challenge, think about what technology would solve that, and then take that next step of considering, okay, what data sets am I now going to have access to as a result of this technology solution? Is it bookings? Is it occupancy data? Is it Wi-Fi triangulation? Whatever that next output is, that data set, and then you can start thinking about, well, what other data set would complement that? What AI model could that potentially contribute to? You just have to keep peeling back the layers of that onion, but always root it in, where will my organization get the most benefit? Is it cost savings? Is it improving the workplace experience? It's going to be different for everybody, and it's going to evolve over time. And I think that's the other really important thing. As you implement technology solutions and start to do that analytics and evaluate your performance, don't be afraid to change the strategy. If you realize that your utilization is not what you thought it was going to be or what you want it to be, how are you going to adapt? Are you going to change the workplace design? Are you going to make it more flexible? Are you going to implement a mandate? If so, how are you going to enforce it? There's just always that next level of digging into, how do you benefit your employees? How do you advance your organizational goals? And how can those data sets continue to combine and aggregate to give you new insights?
Yeah, and also how you're going to measure success. When I think of that, my first point was, understanding what you're trying to achieve. If you want to understand utilization, you've got to ask yourself, at what level? At the building level, at the portfolio level, at the floor level, at the zone level, at the workstation level, because all of those could require different technologies. And what are we actually trying to achieve? Do we just want to know what utilization is, or do we want to establish benchmarks and say, if we come in at 30%, our goal is 40%. And so we're just going to keep iterating until we get it right. So I think closing the loop on those is really an important part of that decision making.
And what I'll add, I think definitely identifying what the end goal is, what are the use cases ahead of time to help inform the functionality that will be needed. Yep. But kind of the step after that is, what do we currently have? And what data of the software do we currently have? What data are they producing? Of that, what are we actually using and what are we not using? What is being duplicated? What do we need to replace because it's so legacy that it wouldn't fit into any of the ecosystems that we need it to? It doesn't have any IP capabilities. Like, what can we do? So I think once you identify like what your end goal is and you have your use cases and how to measure success, it's like, okay, where are we at now? Because that will help, identify the timeline, what is realistic, what needs to be done first before anything else. Where can we save costs because we can actually remove a system that we're paying for now. I think that's a good next step. Yeah.
Do we have time for one more, Corey? I think maybe.
Yeah, definitely. On the topic of IoT devices. And the question is, in your opinion, which software platform would you consider the most comprehensive for effectively integrating and managing IoT ecosystems?
That's a loaded question because the answer is going to be OpenBlue, which is our own. But I will say, going back to the points that I was making earlier, which I think are really important to understand, it's like, is the solution that you're going to be using to unify all this data, does it have security built into it that allows you to manage edge to cloud, right? So really keeping, especially if you're pulling data from your building control and building automation systems and want it to be part of that analysis, you got to make sure it's secure. It should be an open platform because, as Joy was showing that diagram that has a lot of different functional areas, if you really want to bring that data together, it's going to have to be in a platform that makes that easy and has the infrastructure to be able to scale regardless of the size of your integration and has kind of integration at the core of it. I also believe that the other component is, once you've got all of that data, maybe in, you know, in a cloud environment, or, you know, some sort of data warehouse in the cloud environment, the ability to understand the results of that data, like what it is. So are you getting the proper reporting? Are you getting dashboards? Are you getting information? Are you getting AI-based narratives out of that information? I think that's important as well, because if all the data is sitting there and only maybe one person has access to it, it's not doing what it needs to be doing. You really need to be able to disseminate that information across roles as well as devices. So some people access information via phones. Some people do it on tablets. Some people do it at kiosks. Some people do it at the desktop. You know, I have a colleague who says, you don't fill out a mortgage application on your phone. Typically, you'll do that at the desktop, but you'll check the status of your mortgage application on your phone. So understanding that kind of like need, I think, is also part of that selection process as well.
Yeah, my response would be to check the green quadrant.
Good answer. Good answer. We're right at time, I believe.
We are right at time. So just a quick thank you for everyone who joined us today. We thank you for your time. Thank you to our speakers, Joy, Brian, and Jen, for your perspective and insights into all of this data. And everyone have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.